Gather, veterans. It's time to join the fight. The long war begins.
Yo, Don Kenny Boucher here, The Long War, and I'm joined tonight by my partner in crime, Wyatt Turk.
Yo, what's up?
So we don't got Rob. Rob had an issue with Duke Energy. They called him up. They're like, sorry, bro, we can't power your house tonight. You can go try podcast from your car. He tried. He was here earlier, so if you check the pregame show, you can check out kind of a behind-the-scenes footage of Rob in his car in his natural terrarium habitat, sunroof included. Without Rob, we're not going to have to worry about any updates from news. We get to just talk about models, rules. No Dumpster Wars update, unfortunately, though. That is sad, though.
Yeah.
I've been tracking that pretty hard. So
I want to hear more about that.
And I guess if you want to do a one-person would you rather, you could, but...
Well, I mean, it's for the listeners, too, you know?
All right. Well, then let's
I
roll
got
out
kind
some
of a
Wyatt's
silly
Game
one.
Wonders.
Would you rather only be able to shower in your favorite dipping sauce or always have a weeping stranger in your car when you're driving around?
That's brutal.
Now, you do get clean when you shower. Like when you towel off, you're like magically clean. So, you're not like destroying your hygiene or getting like...
So I'm not just covered in whatever my dipping sauce is. Like I have to wash in it. And then when I dry,
yeah.
Okay, I get it. That's
you have
okay.
to go through the process of like showering and like ranch dressing or whatever. But
So I have to figure out what my favorite dipping sauce is. Because the only real issue there is like, how spicy is it?
it's a good point.
You know what I'm
it's
saying?
like Frank's Red Hot. That'd be a problem.
I want to be like, oh, ranch. It's not ranch. It's fucking Texas Pete's pepper sauce. That's my jam.
Oh, I actually have a packet of that right here from lunch.
Oh my God. That's my jam. I can't stop myself from eating it. So feel like that's a problem for me. Like, because even though I will be clean, at what cost?
Yeah. You can't lie about it either. Like in your heart, you know what your favorite is.
Yeah.
So Genie knows.
The genie knows. So even though I will be clean post shower, but the thing is, I have to like go through the shower ritual. Like, I have to get it on my face, under my hair. I have to use it to do shampoo, I'm imagining.
Yeah. It has all the same effects.
My nuts. Bunch of Texas Pete on my nuts. Moof. And then I towel off and I'm magically clean.
Yeah.
Nah, I have to do Weeping Stranger on this one. I don't know if I can survive this, dude. Like, I'm gonna be kind of gross most of the time, and then finally I'm gonna put out showers for days and days. I'm gonna go in there and just burn my nuts off. Can't. I'll just deal with the Weeping Stranger. Is the stranger dangerous or just a weeper, just weeping in my car?
Yeah, they're just having a bad day, hanging out with you.
Magically provided by the genie?
Yeah.
So no matter how many people are in my car, this person shows up somewhere?
Yep.
If I go sit in my car to take a phone call, do they show up?
Only if you go on a drive.
Okay. Yeah, fuck it. Weeping Stranger. It's weird, but it's gonna be hard to explain that to some people. If you were an Uber driver, you'd have to do washing your nuts in Texas Pete's.
That would ruin your business.
Yeah.
You like a 0-star rating.
Yeah. It's just rando just chilling there crying the whole time. That's right, Jeffrey. The weeping stranger is just everyone who picked fucking dipping sauce
That's true.
and teleported to your car. Is it always the same stranger?
It can be if you want it to be.
Well, can you talk to them or they just cry?
Yeah, they're just crying.
Do they for long look at a picture of a dead relative while they do it, and you can kind of figure out why they're crying?
You'll never know.
I'll never know. That would irritate me too. Yo, you've been crying for 42 years. You still won't tell me why. I'm like an old man.
You don't even know their name.
Taco Grinder with a name like Taco Grinder. Are you kidding me? I get to eat and get clean? I do that right now without burning my nuts. I take sandwiches into the shower all the time. You know?
You eat that sandwich with a ice cold shower beer.
Nothing like a shower beer. It's top tier. I used to really partake in the shower beer experience back when I was pouring concrete for a living. Get home, pull a Steel Reserve 211 can out of the fridge, walk straight to the shower, drink that cold ass beer while cleaning all the concrete chemicals off my body. Good times. Of course, I would just, because I lived in a trailer. When I roam, I'd just throw the can on the floor in the bathtub. After a couple of weeks, there'd be 16 fucking cans in there.
Yeah, of course.
Like a kid's bathtub, with toys all in it.
Yeah.
So, no news, but we do get to talk about the game state, some speculations. We had a tactic show earlier today. We got guts to talking, so I'll kick it over to Wyatt so he can kind of catch us up on the state of these faction focuses, and then we can maybe bring this conversation to a similar place we brought it to earlier.
Yeah, so we got Astra Militarum, Demons, Sisters of Battle, and Votan, all faction-focused previews. For some reason, I can't pull up the Astra Militarum one on Warcom. So
did you just Google it? Just Google
it.
Just Google Astra Militarum faction focus. That's how I got to it. I don't search anything on Warcom. I can't find anything.
Well, it's weird because all the other ones are right there in the order in which they were released, but for some reason, this one wasn't. Yeah. So to the surprise of no one, orders are still their thing. Somebody with the officer keyword is going to give out orders. Kind of the same ones stick around with some slight changes. Move, fix bayonets, take aim, first rank fire, second rank fire, take cover, and duty and honor, ranging from, offensive bonuses to duty and honor, improving leadership and the control, objective control characteristic. So pretty cool there. They show off the Canadian shock troops, all their gear and various things, and their data sheet ability is sticky objective. So if you control an objective, you can leave it, and as long as your enemy doesn't touch it, no models have to be on the objective, and they still control it. Pretty cool. Same types of war gear stuff. You can take box casters, all the different weapons, everything looking pretty good. They show off the Bane Blade. It's a beefy boy at toughness 13 with 24 wounds. And it gives the benefit of cover if you have friendly units behind it. Pretty interesting.
That is cool.
They show off things like the Lehman Russ battle cannon. It's still fairly similar, if I remember right. D6 plus 3 shots, hits on 4s, strength 10, -1, AP 3 damage. I think it was 3 damage before. That's pretty solid. They also show off the volcano cannon. and it has a 96-inch range, which I thought was funny. D3 plus 1 shots, strength 24, -5 and 12 flat damage.
Fucking beast.
Big boy gun.
Well, it's
Really
dope
cool.
because, guys, you know what we've been talking about the whole time as they've been releasing these things. We kind of just look at the toughnesses and kind of the strengths of relative guns. And we just kind of I just keep harping on how like we got similarities between, you know, the old armor value chart and what's going on now. But now that we're going into the big territory, it's like it's ever since they showed us the Land Raider toughness 12. So we know like the old armor 14 Land Raider's toughness 12. We know 100 killer missiles are strength 12 and like las cannons are strength 12 and like melted guns are strength 9. So we're starting to see this very thought out strength to toughness. We know the monolith is toughness 14. So what we're seeing here is that a melted gun, its role is to jack up vehicles, not armored fortresses, right? Which historically the melted gun's been so good at this, like you can't think of anything else being better than it. But they're like, no, dog, this is a shit. This is like get in there, get real close and wow, pop a hole in some armor. So with like rhinos being like toughness 9, like that kind of baseline, that's the kind of armor that the melted gun's for. And that's par. That's traditionally when you roll a 4, right? Strength 9, toughness 9. And, you know, it slices right through, does big damage, right? But you're seeing like things like 100 killer missiles and like blast cannons. They're designed to go up to the rolling fortress to hit par, right? That strength 12 to toughness 12 mechanic. So that's like fucking dope because that means they also are wounding the lighter vehicles on the plus, like over par, under par. They're hitting at 3. Okay. So the monolith has historically capped out the armor value chart too, like the Land Raider, but it's higher than the Land Raider toughness. And that's because it always had like living metal rules and other rules that negated certain damage mechanics. So all those weapons that were like hitting par against the Land Raider, because of all that bullshit that the monolith does, they need like 5s and shit, dude. But the fucking volcano cannon hits it with that strength 24.
Yeah.
That means rolling fortresses up to the Land Raider specifications get wounded on 2s, son. Like, it's the gangster gun. And it can't wound toughness 13 and above on 2s, but it's always got the plus there. It's always hitting a 3, but most likely it's hitting a 2. And it's D3 plus 1 attacks. They hit on 4s, wounds on 2s, slices the armor, and does the damage. So mathematically, it's like just enough shots to guarantee the death of things like rhinos and things like that, or completely annihilate a rolling fortress, or even possibly one-shot another Baneblade with decent rolls.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it's for, right? Like the volcano cannon is the Titan Hunter gun. So it totally makes sense. They show up a stratagem called Reinforcements. Happens in any phase of the game. And then one regiment unit from your army that was destroyed, you can use the stratagem on that unit even though it was just destroyed. The effect is add a new unit to your army identical to your destroyed unit in strategic reserves at its starting strength and with all of its wounds remaining. Restrictions. The stratagem cannot be used to return destroyed character units to attached units. That's pretty cool. It's kind of like a better version of Tide of Traders.
Tide of Traders. Do you think they're going to limit it? This doesn't say limited to once per game.
It does not have a once per game limitation on the stratagem card.
Interesting. And so historically in match play, they make you pay reinforcement points for stuff like that in the modern era. If it's not a once per game situation.
Well, you have to have the unit destroyed. So you're just resurrecting a unit rather than bringing in an additional unit.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing, right? Like Tide of Traders was like you had to have one guy survive. So if you killed 29 out of 30, I brought him back to full strength. This is you kill 10 out of 10, 20 out of 20. I bring him back full strength. So interesting because mechanics like this in the past that could be used every turn have been a problem. How many CP is it?
It's 2.
2
CP.
So with no other CP generation, you can do it twice in a game.
Yeah.
Well, that might actually work just fine then.
Yeah. If that's even like part of your game plan or whatever, but I think it's a pretty cool stratagem.
Because it's not like we get 18 CP or anything crazy. Like,
no. So yeah, guard looking pretty cool. I imagine that along with all of the other factions, there is more than just this one thing, just this one army rule. I think that they're showing us like enough to talk about, but not enough to have a full picture. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if this voice of command is just like part of a larger whole of faction rules they're going to get. Then after them was demons. Yeah.
Oh, so you're getting 2. They're saying you get 1 CP per command phase. Is that how tenth this is going to be? I thought they restricted it back down to 1.
It's per command phase.
Oh, so you still get so you can do it on. You can literally do it on turn 2, turn 4. Like, okay, so. But also, somebody in chat mentioned like technically you can do it on a squad of sentinels, too.
Yeah, if they have the right keywords.
That's pretty cool. I mean, that's a pretty useful fucking stratagem, and I think it's held in check pretty reasonably by the lower CP. No reason to come out the gate with over restrictions until it becomes a problem. You just put up a fucking FAQ that says once per game.
Yeah, I think it'll be fine.
Yeah, I like that. That's pretty neat. Guard looking cool, man.
All right, demons. So they're going to get the Shadow of Chaos army rule. If your army faction is Legiones Daemonica, certain areas of the battlefield are considered to be within your army's Shadow of Chaos as follows. Your deployment zone is always within your shadow. At the start of any phase, if you control at least half of the objective markers within no man's land, until the end of that phase, no man's land is within your shadow. At the start of any phase, if you control at least half of the objective markers within your opponent's deployment zone, until the end of your phase, your opponent's deployment zone is within your shadow. And then that goes on to demonic manifestation. While a Legiones Daemonica unit from your army is within the Shadow of Chaos, each time that unit takes a battle shock test, add 1 to that test, and if the test is passed, 1 model in that unit regains up to D3 lost wounds. If that unit is a battle line unit and the test is passed, up to D3 destroyed models can be returned instead. And Demonic Terror. Well, an enemy unit is within your army's Shadow of Chaos. Each time that unit takes a battle shock test, subtract 1 from that test, and if the test is failed, that enemy unit suffers D3 mortal wounds.
That's pretty dope.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool rule. Liking it. They have the Warp Rifts Detachment rule. Each time a Daemonica unit from your army is set up on the battlefield using the Deep Strike ability, if it is set up wholly within your army's Shadow of Chaos, it can be set up anywhere that is more than 6 inches horizontally away from all enemy models instead of more than 9 inches away.
Nice. So kind of a combination of factors. It's like the old demonic instability check back in the day.
Yeah.
You know, when you take a leadership test, you roll double 1s, double 6s situation. So they borrowing from the past again. Also from the modern era, like with this like danger close deep striking mechanic.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. Kind of rewards that aggressive take and hold play style.
Yeah.
And then there's an army rule called Demonic Pact. If every model from your army has the Chaos keyword, you can include Legiones Daemonica units in your army, even if they do not have the faction keyword you selected in the Select Army Faction step. The combined points cost of such units you can include depends on your battle size as shown below. Incursion is 250, Strike Force is 500, Onslaught is 750. None of these models can be your Warlord, and they cannot be given enhancements. In addition, they're limiting the demon, so it's like if you're World Eaters, only Khorne. If you're Emperor's Children, only Sinesh.
Which is cool because like it's historical and relevant that a Chaos Space Marine army can have demons in their army.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool thing.
Very simple way to handle it.
And so we're also seeing like one of the things I was talking about where we've kind of been under this assumption that like the army rule is the army rule, right? But I've always thought that we're going to see more. Like they're only showing us a little bit. And so with this demons thing, they have the Chaos Demons Shadow of Chaos army rule, but they also have the Demonic Pact army rule. So I don't think that there's
one of them is a detachment rule though, right?
Warp Rifts is the detachment rule. Yeah. So I think we're going to see more army rules for these factions than what they're showing off. So I wouldn't like jump to conclusions that you only get the one thing they're showing you.
Corvette, he's like Be'lakor with Chaos Knights. We'll see if Chaos Knights have the Chaos keyword.
Yeah. Be'lakor looking hot. He's toughness 10. He's got 18 wounds. 4-up armor save.
Oh yeah, didn't they reveal that there's a weapon category that is you can attack with it even though you attacked with all your other weapons?
Yes.
Because you mentioned this last week that the rumor was monsters creatures can sling all their attacks.
Yeah, that was like next down the line. I just thought you'd want to hear about Be'lakor.
No, I do. I just remembered that you mentioned that last week. That's all. Yeah, tell me about Be'lakor.
Right. So his ranged weapons are some Witchfires. He's got a regular one and then like a focused version of it. So the Betraying Shades is devastating wounds, so it can proc mortals. It ignores cover. It's a psychic attack. It's got 9 attacks, 2-up, strength 5, -2, 1 damage. And the focused Witchfire adds the hazardous rule, kind of like plasma. It's got 12 attacks. It's on 2s, strength 6, -3, 1 damage. And then his sword has a strike and a sweep. The strike version has 6 attacks, strength 14, -4, d6 plus 1 damage. The sweep has 14 attacks, strength 8, -3, 1 damage. And his aura ability is within 6 inches of him is considered to be your army's Shadow of Chaos.
Nice.
Pretty cool. He has Deep Strike and the Stealth rule, which we still don't know what that means, but he has the Stealth rule. And then he's got the Shadow form, which, like the other guys we've been seeing, it says like pick from one of the 3 things on his card. So his Shadow form abilities is one of them is Wreathed in Shadows, Psychic Aura. While friendly demonic units within 6 inches of this model, that unit can only be targeted by a ranged attack if the attacking model is within 18 inches.
Nice.
He's got Pall of Despair, which is an aura psychic. In the battle shock step of your opponent's command phase, if an enemy unit that is below its starting strength is within 6 inches of this model, that unit must take a battle shock test. For the purposes of this ability, if a unit has a starting strength of 1, it is considered to be below its starting strength while it has lost 1 or more wounds. And then Shadow Lord, while a friendly Legiones Daemonica unit is within 6 of this model, you can reroll battle shock and leadership tests taken for that unit.
Yo, that you can't shoot these motherfuckers unless you're within 18 is potentially very powerful.
Yeah, and the Dark Master aura is really cool too, because as we saw before, that allows you to deep strike within 6 inches.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty neat. And then the extra attacks thing. So they're showing off the weapons on the greater. Oh gosh, what's the big Nurgle guy called?
Great and clean one.
Yeah, great and clean one. And they define what extra attacks means. So weapons with extra attacks in their profile are known as extra attack weapons. Each time that the bearer of such a weapon fights, it can make attacks with that weapon in addition to the one it chooses to fight with. The number of attacks made with an extra attacks weapon cannot be modified by other rules. And then it's showing the bile blade, like the little knife that he has. So it has extra attacks, lethal hits, and then it's stat lines. So we won't see extra attacks number. It'll just be an extra attack weapon. And in this instance, it has 3 attacks.
So it is like kind of like that rumor, but not across the board, but like,
right.
It seems like a lot of monstrous creatures are going to have, which are famously modeled with multiple weapon options. It's not going to just be like, here's my one piddly claw attack. It's like, no, I make a shitload more attacks. Like 3 is pretty good for just extra attack. Yeah.
Yeah. Strength 6, -2, 2 damage weapon. I'll take that.
Yeah, it's pretty fucking hype. And I think I briefed over the Keeper's Secrets too. I think they had one in there too, didn't they?
They did. I just didn't even look at it.
She has some serious extra attacks. Like,
yeah, it had, they have 2 extra attack weapons, the Ritual Knife and Snapping Claws. So a total of 7 extras on top of the 6 for the sword.
fucking brutal.
Pretty cool. Scarbrand. They only show off his weapons. It's the 2 axes that he's got.
That's right.
It's one weapon, and you, as for the profile, and you choose strike or sweep. So the strike version has 8 attacks, strength 16, -4, 6 flat damage.
Gangster.
And this sweep has 16 attacks at strength 8, -1, 2 damage.
Ooh. That dude fucks, dude. 2 damage sweep.
Yeah, he's chopping.
Damn, he does not play games, son.
And the stratagem they show off is called Corrupt Real Space. It's at the start of any command phase. Target 1 demonic unit from your army that is within range of an objective marker you control. Effect. That objective marker is said to be corrupted and remains under your control even if you have no models within range of it, until your opponent controls it at the start or end of any turn. In addition, while an objective marker is corrupted and under your control, the area of the battlefield within 6 inches of that objective marker is considered to be within your army's Shadow of Chaos.
Damn, so you get sticky objective and another shadow zone.
Yes.
1 CP?
Yes.
Not bad.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Pretty
I'm excited
flexible.
to see what else they got going on.
I mean, there's some powerful looking units too. Like some powerful weapon profiles.
And where's the sisters? So sisters were next. So again, to no one's surprise, Act of Faith, Miracle Dice, that's coming back. The Act of Faith is part of their army rule, and you gain Miracle Dice at the start of each turn, and each time an Adeptus Sororitas unit from your army is destroyed. Each time you gain a Miracle Dice, you roll it. The number you roll is the value of the dice. This value cannot be changed or re-rolled unless this rule specifically states otherwise. And it's like, keep them separate. That's your Miracle Dice pool. And then they have an additional army rule performing an Act of Faith. It's a lot, but basically you can use it on advance, battle shock, charge, damage, hit rolls, saving throws, and wound rolls.
And you only can roll one of the dice, right? So so you can't resubstitute 2 dice in a miracle roll, right? I think it says. Like they clarify that, like whatever roll you're doing, substitute 1 dice, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like that. I mean, they keep it pretty chill. They're like, you have to pick before you roll. You can substitute 1 dice. They give you examples of what that means, and here are the list of things you can substitute miracle dice for. I like that.
Yeah, they kind of reined it in because the Miracle Dice were a little out of control.
Yeah.
Especially with the secondaries. The detachment rule is called the Blood of Martyrs. Each time a Sororitas model from your army makes an attack, add 1 to the hit roll if that model's unit is below its starting strength, and add 1 to the wound roll as well if that model's unit is below half strength. For the purposes of this ability, if a unit has a starting strength of 1, it is considered to be below its starting strength while it has lost 1 or more wounds.
Guess it's like them struggling through the pain.
Yeah, pretty neat. They show off the Triumph of St. Catherine. It's that huge base with like 10 Sororitas on a little, carrying the coffin. It's wild stat line because it's toughness 3, but it has 18 wounds.
Huh.
It's pretty crazy. It is a leader. It has relics of the matriarch. At the start of the battle round, you select one of the relics on their data sheet, and it looks like there are 6 of them to choose from. Yeah. The Fiery Heart aura. While an Adeptus Sororitas unit is within 6 inches of this model, if that unit is destroyed, the miracle dice you gain as a result is automatically a 6. Censor of the Sacred Rose aura. While a friendly Sororitas unit within 6 of this model, improve that unit's leadership by 1. Simulacrum of the Ebon Chalice aura. Sororitas unit within 6. You can perform any number of acts of faith per phase instead of only 1. Simulacrum of the Argent Shroud aura. While
That's
a
good.
friendly unit within 6, add 1 to the attacks characteristic of rapid fire weapons equipped by models in that unit. Because now, like, rapid fire isn't automatically double. You just add the number of shots in the rapid fire brackets value. Icon of the Valorous Heart, while a friendly unit within 6, has Feel No Pain 6 up. Petals of the Bloody Rose, while a friendly unit within 6. Melee weapons equipped by models in that unit have the Lethal Hits ability. So pretty neat.
Does she get to pick one for the whole game or just pick per phase?
It's until the start of the next battle round. It's kind of like her Warlord trait, right? Like the same thing that Gilliman, Abaddon, Bellicor, like all those guys are doing is like you select one of these to be active for the battle round.
You pick 2.
Oh, yeah. Hers says 2. Sorry.
Damn. That's not bad.
Let's see. Let me just zoom in a little bit more. Text is really small, even at 150%. They show up the Battle Sisters squad. A lot of this stuff is kind of returning Cherub once per battle. After this unit has performed an act of faith, you gain 1 miracle dice. And they're talking about having like a little token for that. Defenders of the Faith. At the end of your command phase, for each objective marker you control that has 1 or more units from your army with this ability within range of it, you gain 1 miracle dice.
They make it a rain dice.
Yeah. Very similar stat line. They are objective control 2, and they just come with a 6-up invul save. So 3-up armor for the power armor, and then 6-up invul save for I forget what their rule was called, where they always had like a 6-up feel of pain or whatever.
Armor of Faith or whatever.
Yeah, that one. And then they show up the Exorcist, and this is where we get the clarification for indirect fire. And that says weapons with indirect fire in their profile are known as indirect weapons, and attacks can be made with them even if the target is not visible to the attacking model. These attacks can destroy enemy models in a target unit, even though none may have been visible to the attacking unit when you selected that target. If no models in a target unit are visible to the attacking unit when you select that target, then each time a model in the attacking unit makes an attack against that target using an indirect fire weapon, subtract 1 from that attack's hit roll, and the target has the benefit of cover against that attack.
Yeah. And so, and that led to an interesting discussion earlier today in our tactics show. Shout out to Steven, aka 1+Saves, who brought apparently there's a discussion happening in other places on the internet about reading that rule and making inferences based on how wound allocation might work in 10th edition, new 40k, where I guess the speculation is that you might not be able to kill things that you don't see. Whereas currently in Warhammer 40k, if you can see any amount of models in the target unit, you can kill the whole unit. As long as, and so you can read it, reread it, read it a bunch of different times. Doesn't really matter, right? It could be interpreted that way if you wanted to or not. But the reality is we're reading a universal special rule and trying to figure out what the core rule book states on target selection and wound allocation.
Right, because we still don't know how they're going to do line of sight and everything else.
But what's interesting is that Wyatt brought up, I thought something that took us down a fun little tangent. Because here's the thing, we don't know shit. All we know is these little clips they're giving us. We're getting hype, JNRDs, and speculating wildly because it's hilarious and it's fun. And you speculated earlier that you don't think this would be obscuring terrain.
I don't. When we previewed the terrain stuff a couple weeks ago, everything in the game gets benefits of cover, right? Like capitalized benefits of cover is the thing they're throwing around all over the place, right? And unless you have Titanic, towering, keyword, or you're an aircraft, everything gets the benefit of cover if they meet the stipulations, right? So it's possible we might go back to a world where we have true line of sight and we don't need obscuring because everything has cover, right? Because the reason that we didn't like terrain the way it was in 8th edition with true line of sight is that I could see a rivet on your tank through 3 windows and a keyhole, and I could just get that tank, right? And that was big feels bads, and nobody liked it. So we had first floor blocks line of sight, no matter what. And then in 9th edition, they did obscuring to kind of get away from that. And
hold on a second. One second. Kara Quinn said, "Why they said you can't see through buildings even with windows." Is that factored in?
Okay. Well, then I just didn't remember.
So is that a no? That's why we talk about these things. Wild speculation, and we go off on tangents. Is that like a statement, or is that like a classification type? Because right now we're dealing with like terrain and a sequence of keywords that mean things like scalable, breachable, obscuring, so I want to know exactly what it was like a designer note is what Kara Quinn said.
I'm going back to find the terrain thing because I simply just don't remember.
Yeah, no, because these are all things that matter because they showed us terrain, guys. And thank you, Kara Quinn, for bringing that to our attention. They showed us terrain, but we still have a lot of questions. How do you move through the terrain? How do you interact with the terrain, right? Like, they gave us a couple of, of examples of, like, fighting and shooting advantages. They showed us how, like, you get fucking cover, GG, things like that. And someone in chat, Jeffrey, he said, true line of sight, for me, always meant that if you can see the banner, then you can hit the banner. What seems necessary is a command such as take cover behind the wall or etc. So the random arm or the weapon of the banner cannot be targeted. Yeah, see, and this is what's worth talking about, right? So in a game system where you can shoot things and kill them, even if you can't see them all, it's a different feeling than in previous editions, right? So right now, if you peek around the corner to shoot me with your las cannon, and then I say I can see your las cannon guy and I just light it up, I kill the whole squad. I don't care where they are, right? It wasn't actually like that in many editions of Warhammer 40k. Okay? So GW is kind of promising a lower DPS game state right now. That's kind of what they're trying to deliver on. It's kind of interesting because based on all these wild inferences on perhaps you can't kill things you can't see unless you have indirect or models specifically. That is an interesting solution to go back to an earlier game state that we existed in where you actually did peek your last cannon around the wall and took that pop shot. Because all they could do was kill your last cannon in return if they couldn't see shit. So like you putting your guys up in a cool little spot where like just a plasma gunner was shooting down, you might risk it. And because all they can do is kill that one guy, unless they hit you with some exorcist indirect. And then you were like, shit, you jump back down and then maybe, fucking hide on the objective. But like peeking, like head peeking around corners, taking shots of opportunity, maneuvering, things like that don't really happen the same way they used to. Because we just hide behind obscuring terrain features and then move when it's time to kill something. It's not I'm going to see what happens situation. This is I have the DPS. I move my guys here. We look at each other. We play intent, which is another big part of this. I'm like, well, yeah, that's all my guys. You start moving your guys off before I even fucking finish moving my guys. It's a foregone conclusion. We don't really take little chances. There's not really as much luck in the game as people, think there is right now. There's like, what's going to happen when these fucking 8 fucking Sanguinary Guard touch this unit. There's no rolls needed. And so therefore you don't take any shots of opportunity. So we're playing way too much intent right now. We're hiding behind boxes and not doing anything until it's time. And then we're just decimating everything with too high of a DPS score. Which is interesting, again, because the way we do terrain now is an improvement, at least on the surface, with keywords and things like that. But I do think that even if there is obscuring terrain in the new edition or designer's notes, buildings, even with windows you can't shoot through. Let's say buildings you can't shoot through. Let's say that.
So I found it, and it is like a blink and you'll miss it kind of thing, because that bit of it is not on this little graphic. But there is a thing that says ruins, particularly, block visibility of all models through their footprint. And it has some asterisks where it says unless they have aircraft or towering. And so this is kind of interesting because we do have the demon stuff pulled up. And what's the wound cap for obscuring right now? It's 18, right?
18.
Or is it 16? Like
18.
More than 16 or 18? Yeah. So Keeper of Secrets, 18 wounds, does not have the towering keyword. Right? Because like one of the reasons that I was first looking at Be'lakor, then I was like, well, Be'lakor could be obscured before. Like that was one of the cool things, right? So he also has 18 wounds, does not have towering. So it's kind of interesting because what we were talking about in tactics, I was really interested in how this was going to work with Morty and Magnus and Angron. So if Be'lakor and the Keeper of Secrets, and assuming the other greater demons do not have towering, would not be surprised if the Primarch demons do not have towering and can be obscured finally.
Interesting. So if buildings block line of sight, then we're going to probably have less buildings keyword. Or we can hope.
Ruins is the word we're looking for, because buildings are, and the way that GW classifies things, buildings are relegated to fortifications. There are no such things as buildings as far as.
So right now
like,
I play a lot of games where we're just like, it's all ruins, it's all ruins. That's not going to be the case anymore, because if ruins is the word, that means you can't see through it.
Right. And so also this is interesting because they classify hills, right? So it's hills and sealed structures. So you could have like a little like Quonset hut or a bunker or like an actual dirt mound hill, whatever it is on your table. In the paragraph they talk about like that, it does not state that it blocks line of sight. So it might be like just, it has to physically obscure the models from your vision, but it does not have the abstraction that ruins do, that it blocks line of sight even if there's windows and stuff.
Okay. So essentially, this is how I'm going to interpret it, Kara Quinn. If you can see through a building and see my Be'lakor, you can't see him. But if I can see my Be'lakor over the building, you can. That's a difference between obscuring and this wording. Obscuring is like get fucked 5 inches tall. Infinite.
Well, they're using their its footprint. So I'm assuming that it's, unless they clarify it in the core rules, that it is like a pillar infinite into the sky.
Mm-hmm. They're saying you can't shoot through this building, and if that's the only way you can, if you only can see it. But if I can see Be'lakor fucking behind it all, like I'm big as shit, because that's been the issue, right? Infinite pillars. And so if we go to buildings are solid blocks, period, or ruins. And they don't go infinite height. And Kara Quinn says, hasn't GW terrain always gone? No, it's not always been infinite. Like this
obscuring has a height. It has like a minimum height thing.
Yeah, 5 inch tall obscuring blocks line of sight infinitely to everything in a fucking game. Even if it's like standing tall over it.
Right. And so, the problem was that you couldn't play certain things because you couldn't obscure them. So they would just get schwacked immediately.
Mm-hmm. So this would be different if it's based on footprint alone. And people in chat are worried about, like, our Kara Quinn brought up, he's like, man, I hate that, like, shooting the banner or the rivets. It's got to be the body. No, we actually used to play it pretty easy back in the day, Kara Quinn, remember? Base. You had to see the base. The base had to crest the footprint of the thing. So you couldn't see, like, my dude's arms around the corner. You're like, I can see that guy. Motherfucker, the base, you can't see the base. And see, GW started flirting with bringing that back into the game. Right? With concepts like obscuring. So if we go back to an older game format where footprint base, that's what matters. Okay? Then that's completely different. And the fact that ruins say you can't see through them anyway, so it's not even, I don't have to look through a bunch of windows and say, I can sort of see your nuts. No, dude, it said you can't see through this, dog.
Yeah. Right? The dynamic is changing for sure because it was either obscuring or nothing. It's like all or nothing. But now...
And you're right, Kara Quinn. Bases are an issue. I want to make that clear. Anyway, continue.
Yeah. So it was either all or nothing. But now, especially when it comes to like vehicles and some of these larger kind of set piece models, unless they have the towering keyword, they only need to be partially behind that building and they get the benefit of cover. So you're not like totally fucked if you can't be totally obscure. Right. Because that was one of the other problems was that like vehicles and certain other things like could never benefit from cover. And so we're seeing a slight reduction in AP, except for like the huge fuck off guns like the volcano cannon and stuff. Right. And vehicles can have the benefit of cover. So your vehicles are going to be more survivable even against things that are like AP4, AP5.
No doubt. Now we also could have other things. For example, monsters. That's a keyword. Monster might have some other thing. Like, you know, like monstrous creatures used to have their own set of like USRs and other interactions on the battlefield. So it's entirely possible that in some situations you need to see the base, in some situations monsters you don't. Like, who knows? And obviously needing line of sight to the base creates its own problems. I'm not saying that's going to be the end all be all, but what I'm seeing here is not infinite pillars on the battlefield. I'm seeing a potential for if you can't see the model, it can't die unless you have indirect fire, which actually makes indirect fire very valuable even at its nerfed state, right? This -1 and they have cover state being something that can kill things that it can't see. Because right now, you kill all sorts of things you can't see without indirect fire.
Yeah, and so we're also seeing where certain weapon profiles are going to ignore cover too, right? So they show off the Exorcist, right? And you've got your lots of shots, low strength, 0 AP version, and that ignores cover because they're like incendiary grenades that it's launching all over the place, right?
The frag
but then its big gun, the big missile launcher, does not ignore cover and is AP2. So it's not ignoring that stipulation on indirect fire if you can't see it.
Yep. And Tiger Strike Painting brought something up good too. So anything with Torrent also ignores cover. So like that's great because Torrent is like the flame template, right? And so Flamers 100% ignore cover back in the old days.
Yeah.
And so they didn't for a little while, though, in the modern era.
Right. And most of the time, those weapons don't even have AP. I mean, like, you don't have AP until you get to, like, the heavy flamer or maybe a vehicle-mounted flamer like that. And even then, it's kind of low. So if I am sitting in cover with a Space Marine and I have, like, 3-up armor save, I'm going to maintain that 3-up armor save because you don't get the benefit of cover with the 3-up unless it's, what is it? AP1 or AP2. Like, you have to break that threshold. But then you have your other, like, lighter type infantry that do get to benefit from that. So even though it's AP0, you're not having a guardsman go from, like, 5 to a 4 or a 4 to a 3 or something like that. So it does balance out.
Yeah. I mean, I am all for potentially going into a game where if you can't see the model, you can't kill the model. As long as that doesn't bring back this other shit thing that they tried for a while, which was you killed the models closest to the firing weapon. That was a bad time. That sucked. Literally, you would measure your little bolters and shit. Oh, we're all in range. Okay, well, it looks like these 4 are closest to this guy. These 4 are close to this guy. You roll your dice, and I had to start pulling those 2 guys first. So it was always losing front rank, and we always had to kind of determine who the motherfucking guy was. Now, as long as we don't bring that shit back, as long as we don't bring that back, I'm okay with it. But here's another problem. If you can only kill the models that you can see, which I still think is good for DPS and incentivizing movement, and taking pop shots and getting into elevated positions, I think that's great. Here's one tragic thing that comes with that, and that's the old rhino scope. The old rhino snipe. So you can use your own shit to change line of sight for your own shit. So you can only see a specific thing in the target unit and kill it. That was a big part of 3rd edition, guys. We did that shit all the time. Especially when independent characters join units and shit. So
yeah, not sure I like the return of that. So hopefully not.
A lot of arguments. That's right, Carrick. That was my brother almost punched me in the face once. Killed his corn lord. Joined with this squad of berserkers, bro. Set this rhino, put one right here. And I was like, Dreadnought with the last cannon. I can only see your guy.
Yeah, I really hope that's not the case. So we're just going to have to wait and see how all that stuff works in the core rules. Yeah, interesting to see how that's going to shake out. There's lots of different types of indirect weapons. I think it's good that we're keeping that little stipulation where if there's no line of sight at all, you kind of take that little bit of a nerf.
Yes. And to the gentleman's point earlier in the stream, he said, this is all moot. We're in wild speculation land. You're right. We are.
Yeah.
And
that's the fun. It's the fun part.
We're just speculating, dog, based on things that have already happened. We're just drawing on those experiences. We're hearing what people were talking about. Like our boy 1+A's was talking about this conversation about wound allocation earlier today, and we put some thought into it. We're like, okay, let's use some pros and cons if it goes that way. We don't know. GW's only showing us USR rules and weapon profiles, and we're trying to figure out how to play a game based on that. No, we're all wrong, 100%. But some of the things we're saying are probably right, based on how the game has been played since 3rd edition at least.
The last faction focus is Votann. And we speculated that what they might do for grudge tokens was the lethal hits rule, where they would have like lethal hits 6, lethal hits 5, lethal hits 4, maybe something like that. But they've overhauled this quite a bit, actually. So Gone is the 3rd judgment token. Only 2 judgment tokens. That's like your max out. So you can have 1 or 2. If you have 1 judgment token, it's add 1 to the hit roll. And 2 judgment tokens is add 1 to the hit roll and add 1 to the wound roll. And they also limited how you passively gain them. So the only way to passively gain them is if an enemy unit kills a Votann unit. again, speculating, assuming that like your call, high call, different stuff where you can just, give out judgment tokens kind of the way that they've been passively buffing the army, that kind of thing. So we'll have to wait and see. But +1 to hit, +1 to wound, still a great rule. Pretty cool. They have the detachment rule called Ruthless Efficiency. And it's this interesting little kind of like a gamble. You're gambling a little bit. So you pick a unit at the start of the game. That unit automatically gets 2 judgment tokens. And then based on when your army kills that unit, you gain a value of CP. So first or second turn, 3 CP, then 2, then 1. So like if you have a unit of like, I don't know, your Chaos Terminators that are holding the middle. And I know you're going to want to do that. So I'm going to select your Chaos Terminators. If I kill them the first or second turn, I get 3 CP. Pretty simple how that works.
I like that. I like that it's like a point and click buff that, is useful. Cause like if they got this big ass, Bellacore or some shit. You're like, that guy, we're going to need some help taking him down. And so you get this like free buff that if you pull it off, you get extra CPs and maybe a clutch situation. That's pretty neat.
They show off the Hearthkin Warriors. And gone are a lot of things. So we used to have things like Void Armor and the Relentless Advance and all that kind of stuff. So that's all gone. Our guys are still kind of tough at T5, 4-up save, Objective Control 2, still kind of slow, moving at 5 inches. They've retained all their war gear like the scanner, comms array, med pack, all that kind of stuff. And we can see that across the board, the standard ballistic skill of Votann is 4, kind of like guard. Mm-hmm. Some stuff is going to get some help there. Like you have the high las rotary cannon as the heavy rule. So if you stand still, it's going to hit 1 better. Take it from a 5 back down to a 4. We're going to have the judgment tokens give you +1 to hit, that kind of thing. And they also have sticky objectives as their data sheet ability.
Nice. That's interesting. And we're seeing this kind of trend. We're seeing this like, it's not, there's not as much potentially BS3, weapon skill 3 in new 40k as in, 9th and 8th edition.
Yeah. And I mean, it kind of makes sense too, because when the Votann were being talked about and like when the book came out, it felt like the way that this faction was designed, you're supposed to have a lot of these little space dwarves running around, have their zoomy little vehicles and bikes all over the place, like kind of a big table controlling army. But because the rules were so spicy that they had to jump the points costs up. Mm-hmm. And so they became like a hyper elite army where you might have a whole army only have like 5 or 6 drops during deployment, something like that. So I think what's going to end up happening with losing a lot of these rules and reining in their abilities, we're going to see a lot more bodies on the table because points are going to drop significantly.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
They show up the Land Fortress, only one side of the card though. So we don't know how many guys can get in it. It's probably about the same. But they show off all the weapon stuff. Rail cannon, still pretty spicy. It's got a lot of guns. It's T12. It's got 16 wounds, so it can take a beating. And it has that new fire support rule where in your shooting phase after this model has shot, select one enemy unit it's scored 1 or more hits against until the end of the phase. Each time a friendly model that disembarked from the transport this turn makes an attack against that unit, you reroll the wound roll.
Tight. I love that. I love that fire support.
And they show off the reactive reprisal stratagem, a little bit of a change. It's in your opponent's shooting phase just after an enemy unit that has 1 or more judgment tokens on it has resolved its attacks. Target 1 Leagues of Votann unit from your army that was selected as the target. Effect, your Leagues of Votann unit can shoot as if it were your shooting phase, but it must target the enemy unit that just attacked it and can only do so if that enemy unit is an eligible target. It's 2 CP, but that's a really cool
out of sync with
stratagem.
Shooting. It's useful.
Right. And it's better than it was before because before that unit could not shoot in your following shooting phase.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's purely reactive and then that unit can shoot again.
Extra shots for real.
Yeah, overall pretty neat. So World Eaters is next up on the docket. We'll have to see what happens with them. Hopefully they're pretty cool.
It's going to be an exciting one to start seeing what the specialized factions start looking like. I mean, it's pretty exciting. And with, in the title of the show, I made another clickbait title, guys, if you listen to the podcast, talked about deck building in Warhammer 40k. Because we had a conversation about it earlier, but more of a joke. Because people are looking at these decks and these random cards and because it creates a bag of worms if you look at graphically like a deck, right? And my only point on this is it's not really a deck of cards to figure out your missions. That's the visual representation of something we've been doing for years, which is what mission are we playing, guys? And you look through the book and you pick it. And in the past, sometimes you would even roll for it, to roll for deployment, roll for this. Literally, you can visualize the way we're going to play the game as asymmetrical mission design, where you pick your secondaries and shit, with an alternate chart where you randomize them, which is also like how warlord traits and psychic powers and all this bullshit we do right now works. So the deck is more of a joke, in my opinion. It's just a visual aid. Like, all of the missions could be on one piece of paper, and you can just pick them or roll for them. That's not new. That's old as shit. So the cards, don't worry about them. I'm not buying them. Like, I'm not going to have a stack of cards that are probably going to be outdated in a couple of weeks. You know what I mean? I also don't really fancy the, try to keep track of cards, not lose them, and then try to shuffle cards with my opponent on a table. That's none of that's going to happen. Like, you're going to GTs, you're playing fixed missions, aka the version where you just pick the secondaries like we play right now. That's how it's going to go down. So it's a joke. There's no deck building in Warhammer 40k. Wyatt would quit Warhammer 40k. We can't have that.
Yeah, I would totally quit.
Do you have any speculations on World Eaters before we get out of here?
I don't know. It seems like their codex is like already kind of kitted out for 10th. Like, I imagine that like the Berserker's data sheet ability will be that ability where if you shoot them, they get to kind of like move forward a few inches, like that kind of thing. The 8-bound might have a data sheet ability where, they won't let you fall back, something like that. I mean, we've already kind of seen that at the beginning of the game, Angron has to select one of those traits rather than all of them at the same time. So that'll probably carry over into the way a lot of these other big characters are, where it's like, oh, at the start of your turn, select one of these, yada, yada. So I'm just kind of hopeful that Angron is tough enough to use properly. I would be kind of confused if the other greater demons do not have towering and Angron does have towering keyword. Like, that would be kind of feels bads, because I feel like the reason that you can't really play with your big toy, if you're a fan of the World Eaters or the Death Guard or the Thousand Suns, is because of how terrain works, and that, oh, I can just see your guy no matter what, and I'm gonna like blast him off the table turn one, so you can't play with him. So if Angron is like, above toughness 10 and has a bunch of wounds and can make use of terrain to be alive to like cover that distance and get into combat, then I'll be happy.
Oh, that makes sense. I think a lot of people agree with you on that. And I think a lot of people also speculate, as you do, that there won't be a lot of changes because it already seemed kind of 10th optimized.
Yeah.
So, no doubt. Well, this has been our show without Rob. So I'll kick it on over to Wyatt to take us out of here.
For all our extra content, head over to longwar.net. Become a member of the Long War today.